On today's episode of Flyer News, we have a few new videos for you.
First, we have a video from Josh Galvin about Eurovision.
Then we have the weather with Elliot Lord.
After, we have the artistic aesthetic with Esther Elbl.
As well as the quote of the day, presented to us by Andrew Feinblatt.
Finally, we have patch notes with me, Owen, and Max.
All that and more coming up in the latest edition of Flyer News.
But honey, I'll be seeing you wherever I go. But honey, I'll be seeing you down every road. 'Cause honey, I'll come get my things, but I can't let go. Oh, honey, I'll come get my things, but I can't let go.
Good morning, Flyers. Today is day 5, with periods running BDCGF. From Flyer News, I'm Cyrus Zografos.
And I'm Owen Sowers.
Owen, do you remember last week how we talked about favorite songs?
Yeah, I still don't know what yours is.
Oh, and that's not the point.
Then what is the point?
Well, Eurovision 2025 is coming up.
What's Eurovision?
Well, how about we find out?
Let's send it over to Josh Galvin with the story about 2025.
Eurovision has returned to Switzerland through Nemo's victory with their song The Code, and now this edition is one of the most exciting contests we've ever had. I'm Josh Galvin, and Big Five and the previous winner, Spain, Italy, and Switzerland were previewed. Semi-final 2 contained Australia, Montenegro, Ireland, Latvia, Armenia, Austria, Greece, Malta, Lithuania, Georgia, Denmark, Czechia, Luxembourg, Israel, Serbia, and Finland. With acts from the UK, France, and Germany. Semi-final was one of the most unpredictable semi-finals of all time, with Iceland's entry Roa by Gabe and Portugal's entry Deslocado by Napa, both qualifying despite being 12th and 15th in odds to qualify. This meant there would have to be a shock non-qualifier or maybe 2. The unfortunate countries were Belgium with Ritz Fashion song Strobe Lights, which was once projected to be in the top 5 of the whole contest, and Cyprus and Theo Evans. Norway, Albania, Sweden, Iceland, Netherlands, Poland, San Marino, Estonia, Portugal, and Ukraine were the 10 countries to qualify for the final. Now going to semi-final 2, it was more predictable than semi-final 1, but still had some shock qualifiers and non-qualifiers. Denmark qualifying for the first time since before the pandemic with Hallucination by Sistar, that came at the expense of 5th in the odds. Qualify Australia's song Milkshake Man by Gojo, and Kiss Kiss Goodbye by Adonis, the Czech Republic's entry. Lithuania, Israel, Armenia, Denmark, Austria, Luxembourg, Finland, Latvia, Malta, and Greece will perform again tomorrow and try to win. This will be an exciting final with multiple countries going for both the jury and the world's vote. But that's all from me today. I am Josh Galvin with Flyer News, and let's take it back to the desk.
Okay. Let's send it over to Elliot Lord with this week's weather forecast.
Good morning, Flyers. I hope you all had an amazing week and are ready for this weekend. I'm sorry to report that the weather for this weekend is pretty dreary, with Saturday having a 65% chance of rain, a high of 71 and a low of 61. Sunday has a 40% chance of rain with a high of 69 and a low of 58. Getting into next week, Monday has a 30% chance of rain, a high of 65 and a low of 52. That's all for this week's weather update. I'm Elliot Lord, and let's head it back to the desk.
Hey Owen, what's your favorite painting?
Not sure. I never really gave it much thought.
Wow, seriously?
Yeah? Why do you ask?
Well, we have Artistic Aesthetic coming up.
Oh, awesome. Let's see.
Let's send it over to Esther Elbl with Artistic Aesthetic.
Jennifer, Jen's clown at the joke. I have something to say to you. I'm in love with you.
Wait, what? Selena, I never knew you felt this way.
Well, it's true. I never felt like I could say it. Until now.
I feel the same way.
Oh, Jennifer. Miniatures. Multiple times have I seen craft YouTubers and similar sorts try to paint a miniature with some success, but it pains me to see them fall into doing preventable mistakes. The main things you have to account for when it comes to miniature painting: contrasts. The least important thing out of the list would definitely be your materials. Most of your expensive airbrushes and Kolinsky staple brushes aren't going to help you much without the other two. The main things you need are just some paintbrushes and paint with some place to blend and store it. An important part of having your materials, though, is knowing which materials do the best job and how to continue keeping them pristine. To start off, there are three main types of brushes that you should use to pull off all the techniques that you will eventually use: a dry brush, your normal brush, and a brush that you don't really care about getting destroyed. When you use a brush, you'll notice that it has two parts: the belly and the tip. The belly of the brush stores all of your water to prevent the tip from drying out. That's also why, as you get a brush with a smaller belly, you'll have to use water your paints, or else you'll find they'll dry out before you touch it to the figure. For your dry brush, you want to search for a battered brush that will have no use otherwise. A cheap makeup brush has also been the poster child of this category. The point of dry brushing here is to highlight the edges of your figure. Your third brush will be used for washes, glazes, and metallic paints, which is just a thin paint. Either way, the paint in this category is much likelier to ruin your brush here, from the paint getting to the base of your brush, or the mica powder or aluminum from on top paints ruining the bristles. When that eventually happens, you can recycle your brush to become a dry brush. Any sort of paint is technically viable to paint a miniature with, though you'll find that some are better than others when covering your miniature. Having a place to blend your paints is surprisingly important. As you are painting a tiny model, you won't need as much paint as you think, but because of that, your paint can dry up in your palette incredibly fast. This is why a wet palette is really important. One can be scrounged up just by putting a piece of wax paper on a wet paper towel, despite expensive options available for purchase. To explain the third topic, I'm going to place down two miniatures that I made, and I want you to guess which one had won a competition and which got second place. Can you see the reason? It's quite simple. It's contrast. The lack of contrast between the mimic's eyes or the supposed metal bearings, despite aiming for realism, just doesn't draw the eye quite as well as a dwarf. The differences in your values and colors give us our contrast. A recommended way to see this is by using black and white first. With only those two values, we can point out the difference of certain points in the model. Other ways include using color schemes and adding light sources to the points of interest. Let's stop showing my pre-painted miniatures and start showing how to paint an actual one. Let's start with prepping our miniature. Seam lines are found in any miniature, as the mold has its resin or plastic seep-out blocks holding its shape. We'll have to remove these lines manually with a knife. Be careful with it, though, as these lines don't usually require a large amount of pressure to get rid of it. Light scraping or using the back of the knife or semicircular motion from the front of the knife will do. Another issue that every single miniature seems to have are the join lines. Simply applying clay over top of these lines will do the trick. If your miniature is dirty or is not a pre-primed piece, you'll have to wash it with warm sudsy water. This is because they have a protective film over them to prevent scratches. After, we want to add a priming color for your paint to stick to. Using spray paints has been what usually people do, but applying the coat with your brush or by an airbrush works just as well. Now, as we get to painting, there's one incredibly useful tip that most people overlook, and that is that your paint is never fully opaque. even the high-quality stuff with great coverage. It's still not fully opaque. Because of this, when you apply a simple skin tone on your miniature, it's likely to look plasticky. A tip that I've kept in mind is to actually start with the color of the model's blood. The low opacity is not an excuse to load up your brush, though, as then you'll start to see yourself leave visible brush marks on your piece. This is one of the most common tells of an amateur painter. You want to be able to see all of the model's curves and details, which is lost when your paint is caked on top. To get your paint thin enough, you'll usually get a recommendation to get it to the consistency of whole milk, which isn't all that helpful. But what we are instead going to test is the consistencies on our fingers. We want a consistency that has good coverage while not leaving streaks at the sides, as well as being able to see all the grooves in our skin. Now, the most basic steps that people take to paint the miniature is to apply the base colors to each part of the model before applying a wash. But be careful with the wash because too much can leave your model looking shiny. It's not always helpful in the long run. Usually after a wash, people touch up their figure before finalizing all the highlights. Glazing is another way to show your blending. Adding thin layers of watered-down paint to show a gradient or a slight hue shift that could bump up the realism of your miniature, making a smoother transition than what blending can usually provide. Now that you find yourself with a miniature that you're happy with, you likely want to play with it, but be careful because the paint on the miniature can still chip off without the proper attention given. Applying a finishing coat to your miniature will unify how matte or shiny the figure is. Be sure to know what the finish you're applying does, as you can end up with it looking out of place if you apply a matte finish to a slime or something.
At 543 Southern Arts in Quincy, Massachusetts, the very first Dunkin' Donuts yesterday, the location had its 75th anniversary. The first 75 people in line received free coffee for the next 75 days at that location, and every donut sold for that day, 75 cents, will be given to the Dunkin' Joy Children Foundation. It is a charitable foundation supported by Dunkin' that helps children who are battling hunger and illness. The first Dunkin' location, still has the original Dunkin's logo up front, was founded in 1950 because it has become the largest coffee and donuts brand after 75 years.
On April 28th, in a boat race in Arizona, a speedboat crashed at 200 miles per hour. To everyone's shock, instead of coming to a stop, the boat took flight, rising up more than 30 feet into the air, even doing a flip on its way down. Miraculously, the boat flew to the finish line, winning the race. Thankfully, both people in the boat were okay, as they wore helmets, and, quote, "We are just a little bit banged up."
It's that time of day again.
What time of day?
Every time we have the segment, you are never able to give me a good quote you like.
Oh, quote of the day.
Yes, let's send it over to Andrew Feinblatt with quote of the day.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Come here, quick. What's the quote of the day?
Quote of the day is, don't be so stressed out about not doing what you haven't done. Focus on what you're doing now.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Owen, it's that time of day.
What do you mean? We just had quote of the day.
No, Owen, it's our favorite segment. Well, maybe not our favorite, but it's definitely ours.
Patch notes? That is my favorite segment.
Yeah, me too.
Well, how about let's send it over to
Me.
Me and Max Mcgettrick with patch notes.
You know, Owen, I can't think of an idea for gaming news.
I mean, yeah, like, neither can I. My brain is fried. I'm just too tired.
Wait, you said you're tired?
You aren't?
I mean, yeah, I am, but you just gave me a great idea.
Well, what's the idea?
It has to do with sleep.
Well, cut to it then.
All right. Nintendo fans all over the world.
Now that the show is about to wrap up, we're going to send it over to
The pledge.
and maybe some announcements.
Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
that is all for today's episode of Flyer News.
You can rewatch this and other broadcasts again on our YouTube channel or on the FEC TV tab on our school's website.
And while you're at it, don't forget to check us out on Instagram at Framingham High Studios.
Additionally, make sure you remember that you can sign up to make an announcement by going to the link in our Instagram bio. From Flyer News, I'm Owen Sowers.
And I'm Cyrus Zografos. Have a Fork Friday, Flyers.